Hello and welcome to Freedom to Create. My name is Geeta Arora, and today we have two special guests who we're going to talk about a very important topic on. And we have Brie Mathers and we have Sophia Ashworth. And Brie, will you please tell us about how you came to create Love the Skin You're In? It is such an important organization that you've put together. So can you please tell us more about that?
Sure. So Love the Skin You're In was born in my last year of high school. I was a runner when I was in high school, and after I'd won the provincial championships, my body started to change, and rather than embracing that as a wonderful passageway into womanhood, I started to fight it. I felt like this process that was natural of growing up was about getting fat. And so I struggled with disordered eating, I started dieting, and then when I looked around me, I noticed that virtually my whole peer circle was struggling with the same things. And I basically was really lucky to run into The Beauty Myth by Naomi Wolf and Revolution from Within by Gloria Steinem when I was about 17. And so reading those works basically sparked the feminist activist that was born within me.
That's wonderful. And welcome, Sophia. So please tell us, how did you meet Brie and how did you come to working with her? I know you're on the social media team.
Yeah. So my mom actually saw her talk at my old elementary and middle school. And I personally didn't go to the talk, but when my mom came back, she was talking about how great Brie was, and she knows that I'm a feminist, so she's like, you should really meet her. And so we met up, and then I joined the media team, and we were talking over the year and the summer, and I've got to work with her. It's really nice.
Wonderful. So Brie, what exactly is Love the Skin You're In?
So Love the Skin You're In is a whole school, all-girls event championing resiliency and mental health. And so, you know, we address topics like body image, the hypersexualization of women in the media. We look at the kinds of looks-based bullying that often ends up erupting largely out of that kind of messaging. And then we move into talking about the really important stuff like human connection and compassion, both self-compassion and compassion for others, and leadership.
Yeah. So Sophia, you are the vice president of your sophomore class, and you're an athlete, and you have so many amazing talents that you bring together. So how does this relate to what the class that you're in and the age you're in?
Well, it's something that's really important to me, and I see it a lot also in my peer group, the problem with self-image hating, and so it's really, I really want to implement it into my peer group, and as vice president, just maybe do some sort of thing to kind of bring awareness to this and try to change it.
Wonderful. So this brings me to the media objectification. You know, when we look at the media all across, there's so many images that bombard the minds of all of us, but particularly young people and young girls, that they grow up and these images seem to form impressions in the mind that, you know, they just keep seeing it over and over again. So how does that, how do you feel about media objectification?
It's tough. It's tough because it's everywhere. It's kind of hard to avoid. So, and it's sad because people see that and then they think, oh, I should look more like that, and they try to change who they are, what they look like, which is also sad because they're beautiful no matter like what they look like. So, and I think that one perfect image that people just kind of follow as like skinny or whatever, like something like that, is totally wrong and shouldn't be a thing.
Yeah, and so Brie, how have you been able to use that in your events or when you're speaking to girls? How do you see that around?
You mean as an issue? How do I see objectification happening?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, first and foremost, it's sort of obvious when you walk into a venue and your face. So, since it is a large venue, it's an assembly-style talk. It's basically all the girls are suddenly unleashed into the gymnasium or auditorium, and so you get all the girls in the school. You get all the different clique groups. You know, some girls will sit in some area, some like they might not want to sit at the front of the auditorium. You know, you'll see the sort of different social groupings that come in together and sit together and want to sit together. And so that kind of grouping is one of the ways that I think it expresses itself. But objectification and self-objectification, self-objectification sort of comes out of the objectification of women, and it's basically defined as a key process whereby girls and women learn to relate to and treat their bodies as objects of others' desires. And so some of the symptoms of self-objectification are things like constant body monitoring, like that would be the girl that's walking down the hallway at school, sort of consumed with her thigh gap, thinking about what other people might be thinking about her body as she's doing that. And so self-objectification is one of the pieces that we talk about in Love the Skin You're In because it's dehumanizing.
Sure, yeah. And do you think that relates to bullying?
Well, one of the things that sometimes gets overlooked in conversations around bullying is that most bullying is actually looks-based. And so having a conversation that is full of media literacy and full of the way that girls in particular, you know, although youth in general, are basically being groomed to think less and buy more, like at the outset, right? I mean, you're talking about these corporations are going into the bathrooms with 3-year-olds and looking at their behaviors and trying to understand their minds so that they can start targeting their advertising to them, right? So it's a pretty complicated mosaic.
Yeah, this is an important topic because, you know, a lot of times people are not, nobody wants to talk about it. You know, it happens, but nobody really wants to talk about it. It's not an easy topic to deal with. But at the same time, have you seen bullying occurring around the image and self-objectification?
I mean, yeah, people do judge people based off how they look, and I think that can kind of spark certain bullying personally, and I don't see much bullying where I go to high school, in my friend group at least. And I really enjoy that. It's different from middle school, which is nice. But yeah, I think it is a lot of times based off looks.
So what are some of the things that you do to have a harmonious environment for yourself?
Well, I try to focus on things other than looks. So I work hard in school. I try to exercise a lot. I play the guitar. So I like do other things in order to, you know, just keep your mind off how you look and, you know, have more self-worth. You know, you can do all these things, so why base yourself like off what you look like?
Yeah, and loving yourself is so important, and finding ways to love yourself and accept yourself for who you are and how life is coming along. It's an important part for a young girl because, you know, as the years go by, you're turning into a woman, and next thing you know, I mean, you don't even know when you turned from the woman to, a young girl to a woman in life. So, so Brie, I wanted to talk about another very important topic, which are magazines. And for example, we had the Sports Illustrated magazine, the 2015 cover of Sports Illustrated, and that was disturbing to a lot of people. So first of all, you know, I remember we were talking earlier, and Sophia asked, "Who reads that magazine?" You know, so let's take a look at what the cover looks like. If we can put that on for our audience. So there's the image, and how do you think that? What happens to girls when they look at that?
I think that's a travesty, is what I think it is, because I discovered this magazine when I walked into Barnes & Noble's one day and saw 25 different versions of the same cover on a kiosk, right, that was prominent from, you know, the other magazines in the store. And right in front of that kiosk is a 6-year-old girl holding her mother's hand, looking and gazing at this image, right? And so the 6-year-old girl says to her mom, "Mom, what's she doing?" And the mom says, "Oh, I don't know, honey. Maybe she has to pee," right? So basically the imagery, it's incomprehensible to the mind of a 6-year-old. But
Yes.
again, these hypersexualized images are hitting, you know, girls' eyes younger and younger, and then girls themselves are being sexualized more and more. What I find the most distressing about a cover like this is we lose the personhood. So Hannah Davis happens to be the name of this model that's on the 2015 February issue of Sports Illustrated. Nobody knows that she actually was a national tennis champion in the Virgin Islands, where she comes from. Nobody knows that Hannah Davis happened to be valedictorian of her graduating class in high school. All we know is that Hannah Davis is basically, you know, eye candy and becomes an object for consumption. And this hurts girls, and it also hurts guys, because it ends up interrupting, you know, young men's perceptions of young women, and it ends up interrupting some of the expectations that they might have of young women as well. So then you get into things that really connect in with self-objectification, for example. So with something like self-objectification, part of why it's so important to address that is that, and the American Task Force on the Sexualization of Young Girls address this, basically with self-objectification, we're seeing decreased condom use and decreased sexual assertiveness. So the studies are actually showing that the potential repercussions of objectification, self-objectification, are quite great.
Wow. Have you seen this picture?
Yeah.
What were your thoughts on that?
I mean, it's not really, I don't read magazines very often, but I know that a lot of people do. And so what Brie was saying is that that sets expectations for girls, that sets expectations for guys. And when girls know that that's what guys are seeing, then they think, oh, I should look like that because that's what guys are expecting, all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, it's not a good thing to be out there.
Of course. And also, not to mention that most of these images, they're photoshopped, and the images are distorted. They're not really what the real human being looks like. So everything's, go ahead, Brie.
Well, in fact, you know, H&M actually released a 100% digitized female body, and so often what you're seeing when you pass through the checkout counter at the grocery store is not just one body that's been airbrushed and enhanced and doctored. It's actually often 5 or 6 women that have been cut and pasted and then airbrushed together so they can take different body parts from different models. Or it's now, you know, because of CGI technology, it's a totally computer-generated image. So it's not even a live human body.
So are these some things that you talk about at your events?
Absolutely.
Or? Okay, wonderful. Because somebody needs to talk about it.
Yeah, it's really important that it be talked about. And actually the Brave Girls Alliance, it's a girls group based in Australia, they actually started a movement called the Truth in Ads campaign. And what that movement is doing is inviting corporations to a little bit more corporate responsibility, to basically, the invitation is for them to put a disclaimer on their advertisements saying, you know, the image that you are seeing is not actually real, you know, it's been doctored. And it has been very difficult to bring corporations on board with that.
Wow. Wow, this is really amazing. That takes me to another topic of these YouTube videos that are made. And in fact, I found my daughter watching these how to do's, makeup and how to do the hair and all these things. And I found out that, you know, she's watching a video made by a girl in her mid-20s who is looking like it's made for my 12-year-old at the time. And it was disturbing for me. And I don't even know how many moms know that these exist. And the other part of it is that a lot of times when they put together these videos, they're advertising a mascara or a blush or something like that, and the company is probably paying that person to advertise it. So what's the impact on young girls and this, again, self-objectification?
Well, you know, we are creatures of conditioning, right? And so this is basically just another way of reinforcing that a young woman's value occurs primarily in her appearance and in her sexual availability. So yeah, this is very distressing. The other trend on YouTube that's distressing is the onslaught of Am I Pretty YouTube videos that have been created by 11 to 13-year-old girls themselves, basically opening up the question to the whole world. So take a look at me right now. do you think I'm pretty? Do you think I'm ugly? Comment below, right? So there's, there've been over 500,000 of these videos made by these really young girls. So that really shows the kind of impact, that some of the videos that you're talking about are having. They're just reinforcing this idea, again, that your value is in how you look. And then what's so scary about all of this is that beauty, of course, has been totally co-opted by all of these advertisers. And Naomi Wolf talks about this in her book, The Beauty Myth. But basically, the ideal tends to be Caucasian. She tends to be tall. She tends to have large breasts, small waist, blue eyes, the whole deal. And we're being taught that this ideal is what is healthy, that this is what is sexual, and that this is the universal standard to which we should all aspire. So you take these young women that are like growing into these female bodies, and what ends up happening is this very natural process of growing up has been perverted into getting fat. And that's where the pain and the suffering starts for young women.
Yeah, and is there something that you wanted to add to that, Sophia?
Well, there was something that I was thinking of when you were talking about the videos. Could you hold on to that and come back to me for a second while I think of it?
No problem at all. Not to put you on the spot or anything.
Yeah, no, I was just thinking of it, then to get caught in the conversation, like, oh yeah,
Yeah,
that
this is
too.
such a deep conversation, and the other thing that happens is with technology as it advances so quickly, that the adults who have lived up till now really don't know how to take care of that issue with young people, because technology is one of those. It's just one of those things, that's just it's consuming our young children in how they're developing and how their future comes out to be.
And Geeta, we haven't even talked about things like sexting, right? Wherein like that is really one of what's actually happening with sexting is with, in most cases, girls that are under 18 are actually creating and distributing their own child pornography. Because that's what it is. When you send a photograph of yourself that's naked and you're underage, that's child pornography distribution, and it's against the law, right? To say nothing of what actually happens once the picture falls into the hands of boys and then gets distributed on their various channels, and then the kind of self-esteem, disruption.
Sure, and knowing that those images will most likely never go away. There will be somewhere it is stored, and someone can access it at some place. Yeah. So anything today. So that's a big topic,
It is.
and it's something for us to consider. So it's really neat that you're actually doing this kind of work. So going to on a more positive note, I understand that you bring yoga and healing into some of the work you do. Tell us about that.
Well, it's always fun to throw a yoga pose in a presentation, but yoga and Zen mindfulness practice have been a big part of my recovery journey. And one of the things about yoga that's really interesting is, there's two really interesting things, right? One is basically when you're overcoming something like, body dysmorphia, you really need to learn to re-relate to your body, as something that's a human being, right? So rather than relating to your body as an ornament, you start to relate to your body as this living, breathing creature. And the beautiful thing about yoga is that unlike a lot of other forms of bodily movement, it's non-competitive. And you turn the awareness inward. And so with the massaging of the organs, the opening of the heart, like all of these wonderful benefits, the kind of soothing of the nervous system, all of the wonderful chemistry that starts to filter up into the brain, naturally, there's this beautiful wellness of being, that can come of that. And then I actually, was still struggling with, depression in my early 20s, and I was introduced to Zen practice at that time. And when I got my first sort of practical Zen instruction, that was a really pivotal moment for me, because I learned that I'm not my thoughts and I'm not my feelings, and there's always something there that's aware of those thoughts and feelings. So it's actually possible to broaden your view, and you can do that through opening the peripheral vision. And in terms of, one of the good body image exercises I like to give the girls during the talks is, when this kind of body dysmorphia arises, there's usually a fixation on one particular part of the body, and then they go home and they start to mirror gaze, and this kind of negative internal dialogue can happen. And so teaching them, okay, next time you look in the mirror, look at the parts of your body that you love and stay with that and stay with that. And so some of it is just like a retraining of that neurological superhighway in the brain. And yoga and Zen are both incredibly powerful practices for that.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That is the key to changing how those thoughts, those old thought beliefs are instilled in the brain by reintroducing new ideas and doing exactly that, by coming to a place where you're reintroducing a new idea and having the person practice that. So yoga is a practice, and it's something that's done on a daily basis. So that's wonderful. I'm so happy to hear that you're incorporating that. So what are the practices that you have, Sophia?
Well, like I said before, I play the guitar, and so that's kind of kind of a zen for me. I kind of go and play, and sometimes I'll sing if I'm alone because I don't like singing in front of people. But yeah, so that's kind of where I can just focus on playing chords, and music really moves me. So that's nice. But I did remember what I was thinking of.
Please.
I was just remembering in my history class, we're talking about the Renaissance and how women were expected to, one of their main things was to look good. And there was standards for men and standards for women, and a lot of the standards for women were based off looks. And so I think that that's still been carried out for more than hundreds, many years. And even now that women are expected to look a certain way, and it's just like thrown at them through media, now it's even worse because they have a standard to go by. Not only look good, but look this impossible way that everybody's telling you to look like. So that's what I was thinking.
Well, that's a great insight, because that's still true today.
Yeah.
And so many different cultures, and also the Indian culture. It's got a lot of the women, they have to look lighter than their natural skin type. That's a big issue in the Indian community. So different communities, I know, address different things. And I know there was one of the girls who I had heard in one of the, in fact, I think it was your video where when she was younger, she used to bleach her skin.
Yeah.
And yeah, and so there's things like that. And when you look at girls, the things that they have to do and go through in order to show up in the world in the best way that they can, there's so much that they have to do. But just imagining that if you didn't have to put that time and energy into something like that, what could you be creating?
Oh, that's exactly the point, right? Because this kind of fixation on appearance-based issues basically renders the attention contracted into these rote patterns of comportment, right? And so it can be hard you kind of have to take those beauty blinders off and recognize that you're so much more than that, right? And so one of the messages that our social media team and Love the Skin You're In really wants to get across is that the power of your voice and your imagination is so much greater than being eye candy could ever imagine,
That's wonderful. So how do you seek out schools, or do they just find you?
Well, sometimes they do find me. I just had a presentation in Cape Cod last spring, and they found me online. And often it'll be a referral from one school to another. So I'll go to one school, and this one school in Vancouver I did last February. It was the drama teacher that he heard the sound of the girls laughing. He was a guy. He hid in the wings. And then he wrote me this email that said, best reference letter ever, and just told this story of what it was for him to hide in the wings and watch the girls laughing, and then feel himself move to tears a couple times, just witnessing what was going on in the talk. So often it'll be a referral, from another community.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
So maybe we can also put up on our screen how to reach you and find you. So you have a website, and you live in Canada, which is so amazing. And you've traveled to New Zealand and Australia and to California. How do you get around everywhere?
I've kind of embraced a peripatetic existence for my work, for my cause, and so I go where I'm called. So when the call comes in and says, there's a school in Atlanta that wants you, you know, a go. I just feel like there's a greater, you know, universal force that is really driving this. And I am, you know, feel like I'm an instrument of the light that needs to be brought to these young women so that they can awaken their own hearts and live freely.
Well, you're doing great work because that's something that's so necessary in today's world. And so who's your hero?
Who's my hero?
Yes. Who's your hero? Or who's your hero? And she can think about it.
Well, actually, I do have one in mind, but I really love Emma Watson. Not only because I'm a huge Harry Potter dork fan, but not only do I love her character as Hermione, it's like this smart, awesome person, Harry Potter, but then I learned she came out and did the He for She campaign, and she's this awesome woman who's using her power and her attention that she has from her acting to put it towards a good cause, and her speech at the UN was amazing, and so I love her.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
And how about you, Brie?
Probably first and foremost, my mom. You know, she was a strong woman. She raised 3 very strong daughters. And so her love has had a lot of influence in my life. And then Rianne Eisler, I don't know if you know of her, but she wrote a book, you know, over 25 years ago that was groundbreaking. It was called The Chalice and the Blade, and it's been published in about 26 different countries around the world now. And she just has a really wonderful model for how we could really start to bring social change around so that issues such as this sort of beauty myth that, you know, young women are facing become less of an issue. So Rianne Eisler's a big one. Jennifer Posner, who wrote this book called Reality Bites Back, The Disturbing Truth About Guilty Pleasure TV Programming. She's a phenomenal mind when it comes to media literacy. Jamia Wilson, you know, Naomi Wolf, Gloria Steinem. I mean, all my feminist foremothers, really. I am, you know,
That's
in
great.
their wake and
That's
in
great.
gratitude.
Well, ladies, it's been such a pleasure to have both of you, and thank you so much for being on the show. This has been an incredible journey with both of you. Thank you so much, and I hope to have you back again.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Thank you.